Unable to even prepare a simple meal, you're worthless, James. Freezing in the backyard with James, I quickly shut the window and locked it. Frantically, I ran to the window, pleading, "Please open it." As I pounded on the glass, ignoring my pleas, James just grinned and drew the curtains. The cold seeped into my body, which had been warmed by the heater until just a moment ago. I began to shiver, wondering how I would endure this. Even the baby inside me seemed to feel the chill. As I teetered on the edge of passing out from the intense cold and shock, a savior extended a hand, asking, "Are you okay?" The next day, returning home with him, I found James freezing naked in the yard. Liam stepped forward and addressed James with a cold gaze. "That's what you get for not being able to cook properly. Freeze outside." Shivering in the yard, James couldn't even muster a proper reply. "I'll call an ambulance out of the goodness of my heart," Liam declared. Turning to me, he asked, "Emily, anything you want to say to him before it arrives?" Nodding in response, I took a step closer to James. "My name is Emily Smith, a 28-year-old homemaker. My mother passed away due to illness, and my father suddenly died of a heart attack. Being an only child, I was left completely alone. The loneliness was unbearable, but I distracted myself with work. James, my husband, reached out to me during that time. He had a way of comforting my grieving heart and was always there to support me when I cried alone. Once I somewhat recovered, he pursued a relationship, and after dating for a few years, we got married." The next scene unfolded with James freezing naked in the yard as I stared in shock. Liam stepped forward and reminded James, "If you can't even cook properly, then freeze outside." Shivering, James couldn't reply properly. Liam, out of the goodness of his heart, decided to call an ambulance. Turning to me, he asked, "Emily, anything you want to say to him before it arrives?" Nodding, I took a step closer to James. "My name is Emily Smith, a 28-year-old homemaker. My mother passed away due to illness, and my father suddenly died of a heart attack. Being an only child, I was left completely alone. The loneliness was unbearable, but I distracted myself with work. James, my husband, reached out to me during that time. He had a way of comforting my grieving heart and was always there to support me when I cried alone. Once I somewhat recovered, he pursued a relationship, and after dating for a few years, we got married. After our wedding, I started living with James's family. I got along well with my mother-in-law, and we went out for meals together once a week. My father-in-law, who loved to cook, and I also bonded in the kitchen several times. Despite Liam, my brother-in-law, working from home and staying in his room often, we didn't talk much. However, I took an interest in his work, and he explained it to me in detail, helping us get along. A few years after getting married, I became pregnant with James's child, and due to severe morning sickness, I decided to quit my job. This decision wasn't solely mine. I discussed it thoroughly with James's family. Both James and Liam's earnings were enough for us to live on, and I had savings. Besides, my father-in-law worked, and my mother-in-law had a part-time job. Quitting my job doesn't seem to be a problem. Lately, though, James has been complaining about it. He was actually present during our discussions, and at that time, he was the first to suggest that I should quit, labeling me as a freeloader without a job, acting all high and mighty. However, I countered his remarks, pointing out that he should have spoken up during our discussions if he had any complaints. Instead of complaining, he should take care of his own responsibilities, especially since my parents-in-law agreed with my decision. James feels isolated because Liam and he don't get along very well, and Liam never takes James' side. James complains even more when we're alone, insisting that just because my family likes me doesn't mean I should get too cocky. Despite our disagreements, I've always been a competitive person, but once the morning sickness kicked in during pregnancy, I lost the energy to argue. Pregnant women seem to have it easy, not having to work and no one complaining. However, James, my husband, has been voicing his dissatisfaction with my decision to quit. He complains about me being a freeloader without a job, acting high and mighty. Despite being present during our discussions, he never spoke up. I always strive to prove him wrong, but lately, the energy to argue has waned with the onset of morning sickness. James feels isolated as Liam, my brother-in-law, doesn't get along with him, and my in-laws side with me. Even when James complains, Liam immediately comes to my aid, reporting to his parents. James, unhappy with the situation, complains even more when we're alone, accusing me of getting too cocky just because my family likes me. Despite our disagreements, I trusted that James would eventually change, but as he started coming home late, citing overtime, my concerns grew. I wasn't sure if James' claims of being busy with work were true. Even on his days off, he'd say he got called in or needed to stay at the office. Sometimes he didn't return home at all. The suspicion of James cheating on me grew, and his parents shared the same concerns. We attempted to gather evidence together, but catching him in the act proved challenging. He seemed to be constantly at the office, and there was no sign of any particular woman. Uncertain about the situation, I asked one of the junior employees, but she claimed there was nothing unusual. Meanwhile, my severe morning sickness made it impossible for me to handle household chores. Fortunately, my father-in-law took care of the cooking, and my mother-in-law managed other chores. Liam also pitched in, ensuring everything ran smoothly. During this time, James criticized me for lying around all day, not doing any housework despite being the homemaker. His parents, witnessing his behavior, scolded him. However, James, having seen his parents doing the housework, woke me up in the middle of the night just to express his discontent. Frowning at his words, Liam retorted that it wasn't something someone not doing his part as a husband should be saying. The argument between the brothers escalated, and just before it turned physical, their parents intervened to stop them. After hearing the situation, they scolded James and told him to do whatever he wanted. In response, James left without answering. His parents apologized to me on his behalf, and the matter was settled there. James' attitude had been deteriorating, and I felt a growing need to address the situation. One Saturday, my mother-in-law and father-in-law had planned to travel for a local event, expressing concern about leaving me behind. Despite my reassurances, they seemed worried as they headed off on a 3-day trip. Around the same time, Liam had overnight commitments, apologizing for leaving during such a time, but advising me to take care and be safe. Unusually, James was home that day, still asleep when I decided to get up and attend to some tasks. Despite not feeling my best, I didn't want to risk James criticizing me. Fortunately, my father-in-law had prepped and stored plenty of dishes in the fridge. I started cleaning and doing laundry at a slow pace to avoid overexertion. When James finally woke up close to noon, he demanded breakfast with a grumpy look on his face. Rolling my eyes, I pulled some leftovers from the fridge. His comment about me being a homemaker who couldn't even cook irked me. I couldn't understand why he would say such things, especially considering I was carrying his child. Unable to contain my frustration, I retorted that my current job was to take care of our baby, and adult care had been put on the back burner. Before I could process James's shouted response, the door flung open with a bang, revealing Liam. Clearly having heard the shouting from outside, he shot James a disapproving look. Ignoring the tension, James headed back into his room, muttering some curse words under his breath. Just as I thought the situation had settled, James made a noise, indicating he was leaving the house. Liam sighed heavily and checked in on me, asking if I was okay. I explained that I was fine, and he mentioned coming to pick up something he forgot. As he looked at me with a worried expression, the concern in his eyes was palpable. I chuckled, noticing how much Liam resembled his mother, and encouraged him to go on his way. Liam hesitated before finally leaving. As he departed, I couldn't help but wonder where the James I first met had gone. Divorce seemed like a looming possibility, but I still harbored a desire to remain a family with my in-laws. Feeling suddenly exhausted, I decided to lie down, and as I closed my eyes, I drifted into a deep sleep. Emily, time to wake up. My eyes fluttered open as I met James's gaze, giving me a wry smile. I must have dozed off completely. Anticipating an earful from James, I braced myself, but he surprised me with a gentle tone. "I'd let you sleep, but it's already evening." My eyes widened in shock as he continued, "I've prepared dinner, so when you're up, come join me." With that, he left the room, and I couldn't help but wonder if he had covered me with a blanket. Heading to the kitchen, I found my father-in-law's dishes already warmed up and ready to eat. "I'm sorry, Emily," James apologized. "When I heard we were having a child, I was ecstatic, but then I felt so overwhelmed, and I took it out on you. This is my way of saying sorry." He presented a cake, and while this gesture wouldn't erase all of James' past behaviors, his genuine apology warmed my heart. For now, I decided to let it go and enjoy our meal together. As we finished eating, James pointed out the snow starting to fall outside. "Hey, look, it's starting to snow." His childlike excitement was contagious, and I chuckled as we headed towards the porch to take a closer look. The white snow falling against the night backdrop was indeed beautiful. Coming from an area where it rarely snowed, this scene felt fresh to me. Without thinking, I moved closer to the window. "Let's open the window," James suggested. "No, it's going to be cold," I replied. "Just put on a jacket, and you'll be fine." As he draped a jacket over me and opened the window, the chilly wind rushed in. Bracing myself against the cold, James unexpectedly hugged my arm. Turning around, I found him grinning mischievously. "You're a homemaker, and yet you don't do the housework. That makes you a failure as a wife. Reflect on that tonight." Confused, I retorted, "Excuse me? What are you talking about? You can't even cook a meal, you trash." "Go freeze in the backyard with that, James." Shut the window and locked it, then ran to the window, pleading, "Please open it," as I pounded on the glass. James just grinned and drew the curtains, leaving me shivering from the intense cold. My body, warmed by the heater moments ago, rapidly lost its warmth. Panicking, I felt on the verge of passing out from the shock when a savior extended a hand to me, asking if I was okay. Liam, who had been worried about James, arrived earlier than planned and immediately put me in his car. "Why are you out here at this time of night?" Liam asked as he drove. He was concerned about James, and on our way to the hospital, he explained that he had arrived home earlier than expected and found James sleeping in the living room, stripped down, with a woman who appeared to be his mistress. Liam, burning with rage, threw James out of the house in his birthday suit, having discovered that James had brought his mistress home, thinking we wouldn't be around. Arriving at the hospital, Liam arranged for a hotel for us to stay while I was being examined. Fortunately, both my baby and I were fine. Liam left to take care of other matters, and the next day, he dropped me off at home. In the yard, I found James freezing naked. Liam confronted him, reminding him of his previous words about freezing outside if he couldn't cook properly. Shivering in the yard, James couldn't even reply properly. "I'll call an ambulance out of the goodness of my heart," Liam declared. Turning to me, he asked if I wanted to say anything to James before it arrived. Nodding in response, I took a step closer to James and expressed my anger. "It's because of you that our baby was almost in grave danger. I will never forgive you. Just you wait." James was taken to the hospital, and later, Liam informed me about the events of the previous night. Liam, burning with rage, had found evidence of James' infidelity, forcibly sent the mistress back to her place, and informed her family about everything. The revelation that she had a family as well added another layer to the complexity of the situation. The confrontation with the mistress lasted all night, and by the time her family was informed, dawn was approaching. Liam took a short nap in the car and then came to pick me up, sharing how he had spoken to my parents and that they were returning home that day. He stayed by my side until they returned, providing a comforting presence. Expressing my gratitude, I assured him that everything would be okay now. Liam, with a gentle smile, said, "Nah, I just did what had to be done." Thanks to him, I could feel safe at home. As soon as my parents returned, they apologized immediately and confronted James about his actions. James was forced to pay child support, and it was decided that he would be kicked out. Despite James' attempts to cling to me and offer apologies, I ignored him, determined to move on from the betrayal. During the confrontation, James flared up and raised his hand at me, but my damned son, Liam, intervened, grabbing and twisting James's arm. With the additional help of my father-in-law, James was easily overpowered and thrown out. Watching him being escorted out, I couldn't help but think he looked pathetic until the very end. After James's departure, I decided to stay and be cared for in my in-laws' home, as I had no family or reliable person to turn to. Grateful for their support, I chose to remain in their warm and welcoming environment. Liam, who had returned, surprised me with his strength, revealing that he used to participate in combat sports. His strength and good looks caught my mother-in-law's attention, leading to some playful banter. From then on, I decided to stay and be cared for in my in-laws' home, as I had no family or reliable person to turn to. Grateful for their support, I chose to remain in their warm and welcoming environment. Liam, who had returned, surprised me with his strength, revealing that he used to participate in combat sports. His strength and good looks caught my mother-in-law's attention, leading to some playful banter. As we eagerly awaited the birth of my precious baby, I learned more about James the Fair. It turned out to be with a junior from his office, explaining why she wouldn't disclose details when questioned. The two of them had been sneaking around and getting cozy at various spots. I reported the affair to the junior's husband, who conducted a thorough investigation, providing the evidence needed to confront and expose the truth. The divorce process with James went smoothly, and both he and his mistress were fired for inappropriate behavior during work hours and falsely claiming their dates as business expenses. James, seeking forgiveness, returned to his family's home but was promptly chased off as his family refused to burden me further. During this time, I found myself drawn to Liam, who had been reliable and supportive throughout the ordeal. Liam, grateful for the help, expressed his feelings for me, admitting that he had hidden them due to his role as my brother's wife. I appreciated his honesty, but I explained that I wasn't looking for a relationship at the moment. However, I told him that if he could wait a little, I would be open to responding to his feelings. Surprisingly, Liam had harbored feelings for me for quite some time, appreciating that I listened to him when others did not. He looked down, confessing his emotions, and I found myself doing the same. To my surprise, he was willing to wait and be patient, beaming with a radiant smile. Our conversation was fully witnessed by Liam's parents, who joined in the joyous celebration. Dinner turned into a feast, and it was revealed that Liam finally had a girlfriend. His overjoyed mother teased him, and Liam blushed deeply. We laughed and exchanged glances, enjoying the light-hearted atmosphere. I eventually gave birth to a beautiful daughter, and Liam continued to be a supportive and involved father. His parents and my daughter provided additional support, allowing me to raise her with peace of mind. 100 days after finalizing my divorce with James, Liam proposed, expressing his desire to be her father. We eventually married, and Liam wholeheartedly embraced his role as a loving dad. James, on the other hand, paid back the embezzled money and went missing after allegedly borrowing from shady individuals. Regardless, my in-laws were thrilled with their granddaughter, showing no concern about James. Years later, I happily remarried Liam, and our family expanded with the anticipation of a second child. As I carry our second child in my belly, our daughter is excited about becoming a big sister. We're brainstorming names, and it looks like our daughter's suggestion might win. The entire family is eagerly awaiting the new addition, and we plan to live happily ever after, all 6 of us living in harmony and having fun. That's the promise Liam and I have made as we look forward to going out as a family once the baby is born.